Okay, so I am filming the introduction to this video after I've actually finished shooting the rest of the video. Go figure. And that's because I am in Yorkshire. I'm visiting family and I came out for a couple of hours photography. Didn't think I would have much time, so didn't plan to film any of this, but I have. And I've been looking to shoot some industrial long exposures using the Lee Super Stopper. So I drove off to Drax Powerstation, which you'll see a little bit of in this video. I'm downloading my stories from Insta Stories and from Snapchat, so hopefully you'll see some poor quality, but you'll see some clips from there. I'm on both of those as Dan Pearson Photo, the same as indeed this YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, by the way, but if you do use Snapchat, follow me, Dan Pearson Photo, on Snapchat. Follow me on Instagram, it'd be great to see you on there. I'm also on Twitter. I ended up having a drive out to Drax Powerstation, which is at Selby, and I've got a few images from there as well today. I won't take up any more of your time. Watch the rest of the video. It's a relatively short one. There's a little bit of excitement when we got approached by security at one stage, and yeah, I'll see you guys at the end of the vid. Well guys, I'm driving around in Yorkshire now, looking for some industrial compositions for black and white long exposure photography. It's very high contrast, there's not a lot of cloud in the sky, so I need to either shoot with no cloud in a simple composition or wait for a little bit more cloud to come into an appropriate shot. Need a lot more smoke and steam coming out of these cooling towers. It's backlit, which is really nice because we can underexpose the towers quite heavily and get a lot of smoke moving, but there's not enough smoke there. In the distance is Selby Power Station, and there's some great smoke coming out of there. We ought to have a drive over there. I've got two ideas for shots at Drax Powerstation near Selby. One of them is a composition which is a wider angle, even though it's on the longer lens, with the cooling towers in the bottom left hand, and as the smoke's blowing away to the right hand side, we've got an exposure running there to try and get some of that movement and direction. I'm then going to shoot in a lot tighter at the longer end of the 70 to 200 and try and get right in next to the steam coming out of the top of the cooling towers. It was worth driving over here from Drax. There's a lot more activity within the cooling towers at Drax today, so we should get some nice mono contrasty images. Some very intense and beautiful light here, just cropping in on the top of these cooling towers, trying to find a composition that works. I really favour these very simple compositions when it comes to these type of industrial mono images. Trying to find a very simple, cropped in, tight composition I think works very well for me. And although the long exposure does take some of the texture out of the image, it also helps to simplify the shot. It's interesting trying to be experimental. It's really, really bright today, so even with the Lee Super Stopper, at f9 we're still actually only at 120 seconds exposure, which is enough to blur that smoke that's coming out of the top of the cooling towers, which is drifting to the right. Cropped in tight on the top of these cooling towers. I've still got two of the top towers mainly in the foreground. I'm going to take a look at these shots and see how they look in colour on the back of the camera. still trying to get a very simple composition here, but I'm struggling in the position that I'm in. So I've actually zoomed back out again to around 70-75 mil, and I'm incorporating some of the scene on the left hand side. Now this is a more cluttered composition, but there's a lot of contrast in the sky, so there's some nice light coming into the foreground, which I've kind of included at the bottom of the shot. And what I've decided to do is to underexpose this a touch for the shadow detail and actually make it very contrasty and see what this looks like. So I'm at f9. I was at 1/250th of a second in terms of my original exposure. So we just have to wait now and see what this comes out like. Got to be honest, I'm not really liking any of the shots from this location. It looks okay when you first pull up, but when you actually get the camera out and you start to play around, it's very difficult to take some of these distracting elements out of the shot for a tighter shot, and the wider shots are just too cluttered. We've got too many pylons coming in, and it seems to be the case that that's pretty much all the way around this side of Drax Powerstation. But I want to be on this side because the sun is over there and I want that backlighting in these clouds. So what I'm going to do is have a little drive back down here and down this road and see whether or not I can get closer and shoot a little bit up. On the way in it didn't look promising, but let's go give it a go. So just need to find somewhere to turn around, drive back down the road that I'm on now. It's frustrating. The light where I am is perfect, and the position of the light is perfect. It's just that the composition isn't, and it's no matter where I am, I've got power cables or something coming into the shot all the way down this road, which is just interfering in trying to create a very simple composition. There's a line of trees to my right hand side here which would be great as foreground into a layered composition again, but we've got those power cables running straight through. It's so infuriating. It really is. You know, there's lots of interesting compositions, and further up this road, the way that I've come here, the cooling towers sit in a much better position compositionally in terms of being geometric, and trying to look for patterns within shots is something that I really like to do as well, especially with these sort of mono simplistic compositions, whether they're long exposure or not. That type of thing works well, and it's looking for patterns, shapes, geometric shapes, geodesic shapes, looking for repetition, and these are all of the type of things that are in my head as I'm shooting, trying to kind of come up with something that works compositionally. This is a very tight little lane we're going down. The light is fantastic, it really is, it's beautiful. It's intense, but it's good. Just need to get a move on, get my foot down, and actually try and get into position and see if there's something that works. You know, I'm kind of looking here. We're very heavily backlit here. We don't have quite the same level of sun. And possibly a couple of wider shots. There are a track leading away in front of us. I'm just looking at a shot here. There's effectively a pool of water in front of these cooling towers, and I'm torn between driving further down and trying to find a more simple composition, which I think there probably is one there, or between putting a wider angle lens on and having a look at this pool of water and seeing if there's any reflections to be had out of it. I'm going to drive further down because those cooling towers are really well backlit. The fact is that there's probably a long exposure shot to be had here anyway. It may even end up being a blend of two exposures if I come back to that little spot. It's not amazingly picturesque. There's another section of water here. Wow, that's like that. I say that's like a mill pond. That is pretty much a mill pond of sorts, but it's as flat as a mill pond. We need to try and get some of these pylons out of the way. And again, as I'm driving up here, the frustration that I can see already is that as soon as we get closer to the power station, we move out of sight of the power cables and the pylons. We're getting slap bang into all of these trees, and then the minute we get away from these trees, we are slap bang into, yeah, it's very difficult. I'm gonna pull up here, just jump out of the car and see what we can get. One thing it is important to remember when you're out photographing is that there are certain sites which are potentially sensitive, so always try and be courteous and make sure that you're acting appropriately. We've just had the guys from the security at the power station come over for a quick chat, and the guy's really friendly, and all we've done is just give him a few details, let him take a vehicle registration, and it's just for security. There's nothing in the UK that prevents you from photographing power stations, but it is important to make sure that you know, you're acting accordingly and appropriately. So that's just something to bear in mind. No need for you to be defensive if anybody comes and asks a question. Most of the time these people will be really professional and courteous to you, so by all means just be courteous back to them. I don't mind extending a few personal details to them in order to make sure that we're getting the shots that we want, and also make sure that they feel comfortable as well. So here the light levels have dropped off even more, and I'm now shooting at f9, and that was about 1/125th, so that's going to give me somewhere in the region of about a 4-minute exposure, 240 seconds. I don't mind if this is a little bit underexposed, so I probably will leave it at that, but again, keep checking your light levels as you're going through this process. Make sure that as the levels are dropping, that you're, you know, need to make any adjustments to your calculations, that you do so, and that's literally just observing and being really switched on to what the light was like at the time of starting to take the shot, and also how the light drops or increases as you go through the shot. And again, I've moved a little bit to the right. I've got two cooling towers and one of the vertical chimneys just in shot. There's a lot of afterglow, but the light levels have dropped off again, and my calculation at f6.3 was that I needed around an 8-minute exposure, and that wasn't particularly underexposing the shot and trying to get the cooling towers to be really dark and to retain all of the highlights. I actually think I'll get a bit of detail in the cooling towers and also within the highlights at that particular setting. So we're just going to have to stand around. We're at just over 2 minutes, so we've got around 6 minutes remaining, and then I think we're going to drive off and go and try somewhere else, or maybe even go and get some food, because I am now getting quite hungry. We are at around 300 seconds. Not long to go. Again, during this exposure, light levels have dropped as the sun's setting behind the cooling towers. So I'm going to extend it. It was originally 480 seconds. Now I'm going to push that a little bit longer to compensate. Keep reiterating these points to you, probably getting on your nerves a little bit. But I just want to make sure that you kind of get to understand how I think and my thought process, and hopefully you guys, if you're not doing this much at the moment, it'll sink in for you guys and you'll end up getting some awesome shots. Sunset behind us, know if you can see that. And we're still running a 4-minute long exposure here, just at the top of the cooling towers. There's some nice colours in there. My intention was mono, but we may get a decent colour shot. Shot from there that I think moderately happy with on the back of the camera. This trip's not been quite what I hoped it would be. It's the first time that I've been out to Drax to try and shoot something like this. So the reality is that it's been a good scouting mission for me. And it's a shame that I've not had a little bit more time to spend here, but if I've got a shot out of it, then I'll be quite happy. I'm happy to come away with one shot that I quite like from any shoot. Well guys, thanks for watching this video, hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to follow me on Snapchat, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. Sound like a total social media whore, but I use them in different ways, always lots of different content, and hopefully some of it is useful. Well, we have come to York for a walk around the Christmas markets, and whilst we're here, we're going to grab a camera and also take a little bit of video and hopefully some still shots as well. It's early afternoon, sun's out, it's absolutely gorgeous, and York's looking pretty busy, so it's nice to be here, and hopefully we'll have a bit of fun. The river's one of the best locations to photograph in York, and we're walking down towards one of the bridges where we're going to try and do a few wide angle long exposure shots looking down the river in this soft afternoon light. Now I'm just going to do a couple of different shots here. I'm going to do a HDR, a blend of 5 exposures. I'm going to do an exposure blend, and I'm also going to do a long exposure with the Lee Big Stopper.
Just between you and Phil, I guess.
Yeah, it's none of your problems.
You enjoying the view, Snake? So as I've just mentioned, I've taken a couple of different shots already. This one is a long exposure using the Lee Big Stopper again, and we've got around an 8-minute exposure. There's not a lot of detail in the sky, but I just want to make sure that we render the river ooze as completely flat as possible in this particular shot. I've also used a 3-stop Kokin Z Pro Grad here, just to take a little bit of darkness, a little bit of brightness out of the sky. There's a lot of light pooling onto this left-hand building, and that's drawing you in. And we've got a little bit of this, these boats in the foreground to be used as part of the composition. It's a beautiful scene, it really is. It's gorgeous today, gorgeous. One thing that I am hoping with this scene is that these boats aren't really moving too much, because over 8 minutes that's going to render them blurred. If they're only slightly blurred, that might actually not look great. If there's a bit more blurring, we might get away with it. But ultimately, until the shot's been taken and finished, we're not going to know how they look physically in shot. What I'm also going to try to do is to show you a few different ways to post-process these different types of shots. As I say, between trying to do an exposure blend between two different exposures, trying to do the HDR and also the long exposure, it may actually be the case that we end up merging some of those different techniques even into the same shot to pick out areas within the scene to make it really pop when we've actually finished taking these images and processing them. I'm shooting these primarily at f9. There's enough depth of field for me to get this in on the long exposures. In terms of my exposure blends, I'd prefer to go to f11 maybe and actually focus stack these from the boats right the way through to the back bridge, just to make sure everything from front to back is pin sharp. So I'm just packing this super stopper away now. We're going to move on to a different location. What are you doing, Snake? What you doing? So we've stopped off in Costa Coffee and refreshing with a hot chocolate and deciding what we do next. So we're going to have a wander back into town, have a little wander around the Christmas markets and maybe see how we're getting on time-wise. We're at 20 to 3, sunset's in about 40 minutes or so, 50 minutes, so might have a walk down to the other bridge, see if we can get a shot from there. So we've just finished having a coffee, or more accurately a hot chocolate, and we're wandering back into York now. York Minster is off to our left. I'm not quite sure if we're going to have a little walk up the shambles, and we'll have to see what Nicola wants to do and see where the markets are. Should still be a few shots to be had though. Well, I'm having a little bit of a wander around York's Christmas markets, and I've stumbled upon some great landscape photography from a guy who used to be on one of the websites that I was on a long time ago. And there's some absolutely fantastic landscape shots here. This is a work of Dennis Bromwich, and what I will do is I will post a link in the vlog to Dennis's website so you can have a browse through some of this stuff. There's some great scenes from the Lake District around Yorkshire. Having a look at some scenes from Whitby here, which is obviously relatively close by, and also some shots of York. So I'm hoping that these guys are having a good day today, and I hope that they're selling a lot of images. They keep your little paws warm. They keep your little paws warm. They do. Pearson crew are out in force in York. Christmas 2016. So we've come down onto this bridge at York overlooking the River Ouse, but the conditions are just really not right. There's not enough light on the left-hand side buildings anymore. So I think that for today that's probably it. There's not enough contrast to really get some great monos. So we're going to wrap up here now and call it a day. Go over to the other side.